right, welcome to the March 2024 TriEmbed meeting. We'll start with announcements. Scott, do you want to say anything about RARS Fest?
Yeah, sorry I hadn't gotten back to you yet. I got the official word from the RARS guys that yes, we can purchase our 8 tables. We get 2 free tables. Individuals are going to have to buy their tickets. So I just need somebody to buy the 8 tables, and then each of us clubs will have to reimburse that person their amount for the tables themselves.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm planning on being there. This is April 6th, Saturday. If people want to come by and spell me for a little bit so I can walk around a little, that would be appreciated.
I will certainly be there spelling you.
What are the dates of that again? I want to put it in the notes here.
April
April
6th.
6th is the Ham Fest, and we're going to go in on Friday, a few of us, to pre-set up the tables and preset some of the things. I'm trying to coordinate between 7 different clubs, so I'm going to get TriEmbed's getting 2 tables. We'll want to set the skirt on them, and that's pretty much it.
Did you say April 6th?
Yes.
Okay.
Saturday.
I'm going to try and make a display and some toys, but I have 2 different conflicts with that date, so I won't be able to be there.
Okay, other announcements?
I can be there if it's of any help, just,
Yeah, I'm going to try and be there.
You guys will have to buy your own tickets, if that's okay.
That's expected, I think. Is there a discount for buying them early or not?
Yeah.
A couple bucks?
Do we still have, yeah, it's only a couple of bucks, but
8 instead
I
of 10 or
usually
something.
do that.
Okay, other announcements? Anything else going on? So the Forge is running a SumoBot tournament April 21st. And they're having a series of workshops for people to build their robots and program them. Saturday's starting this coming Saturday until the 21st. And then they actually are running a few weeks past that. And then they're running another tournament that they call Space Schlepping 3 weeks later. So it's like the early part of May.
What are they schlepping?
They're schlepping CO2 canisters on a centrifugal space station. So they're it's very much like a first robotics competition. So there's a game arena there. The space schlepping one is round instead of square, and 6 teams, two sets of 3 are competing, and there's so you take your robot and you push soda bottles. I think they're empty, but there may be a little bit of weight in them to keep them from toppling over, that represent CO2 canisters on the space station, and the robots have to take it from the living quarters back to the central hub to get recharged or something.
So this is a full-size thingy?
So it's a 10-foot circle with a 1-foot white border. So it looks very much like a SumoBot arena, but it's much bigger.
And is it spinning?
It is not spinning.
Oh, okay.
Conceptually, it's supposed to be spinning, but in actuality, it's just plywood sitting on the floor.
Who's coordinating all the robotics over there at Forge Initiative?
Joe's Jose. Joe's. His last name starts with an A. Is running this this set of competitions.
The reason why I asked that is over at RARS, they're going to be given space for a robot. So they might want to come in on Friday and set up.
Yeah, I think one of the FRC teams is going to bring their robot. I would assume that Rob Mackey is the right contact for
If I
setting
make
that up.
one of my robots available, do you think they'd be interested in letting people drive it around?
Who's they?
Whoever's making that robot space. You said
I think
RARS was
they.
saying this side.
RARS would love for other people to come and rent tables from them. They would expect you to do your own demos.
Hey, Charles, one thing I'd suggest, two of the
Mhm.
Splat Space people are also going to be showing off some robots. If you want to, if we just make sure the TriEmbed table is next to the Splat table, we can just kind of cross over and share robot demonstrations.
Okay.
Yeah, but you need somebody to run it, and Charlie is saying that he's not
Oh,
necessarily going to
he's
be able.
not going to be there.
He's not going to be
Mm.
there
I
to
might be able to
staff
get
it.
someone to show up for me. They won't be able to explain the tech very much, but they might be one to make sure no one walks off with the robot or does anything dangerous with it. All right. Do you know who those two people are? Maybe I could reach out to them and coordinate.
Actually, I'm using my phone right now, so unfortunately, no.
Fair enough.
What I can do, Charles, is just email you after the meeting tonight and try to get you hooked up with them because one of them might be able to run your robot for you.
That'd be great if they're willing.
I can maybe run your robot, but I'm not sure I won't be dangerous with it.
Okay. If I can make a fence or something, if I can get an idea of the space, I can build a pretty sturdy fence for it. And the robot itself, you're not going to damage it.
I underestimate.
Well, the robot corral is going to be, if I remember right, Paul, from last year, they typically go about 16 feet by 16 feet.
Yeah, I don't remember who set that up. I think it's the Forge people that brought their own corral.
Yeah, they brought their own fencing and stuff.
So I don't know that they would be willing to have other people demo their robots inside of it.
I'll talk with the Forge and Spot Pace people if they're doing their own robot demos. I'll make sure we coordinate.
Yeah, I mean, there will be room over there, I would imagine, on the concrete floor if you wanted to drive a robot around a little bit and show people.
Yeah, because we're essentially going to be allocated into that corner. It's a high traffic corner, but the back side of us is basically the robotic space. They've given us a good chunk of floor space to do the robotic stuff.
Okay.
And then also we got free power. So if you need any charging stuff set up there.
That's good.
Sounds great.
And
Thank
Paul,
you.
when you order the tables, don't click on power. They're giving us free power.
Okay. So do you want me to sign up for 8 tables? And
Yeah, if you could do that.
How will
And
they
then I'll
know
put.
that I'm the...
That's what I'm saying. Let me copy you over their email so that you can put in the notes that this is for the non-for-profit table island, and 2 tables are would be provided free for a total of 10 tables.
Okay.
So I'm going to send you that info when I get home tonight.
Okay.
I'm a half an hour away from house. Still here at work.
All right. Any other announcements? All right. Well, let's see if I can do the problem of the month. All right. Do people see that?
Yep, we see it.
Very good. All right. So as I mentioned a little earlier, the Forge Initiative is running sumo bots in space schlepping. Is that your dog, Carl?
Nope, it's not.
Okay. And so space schlepping requires a robot that can be remote controlled. This is a picture of my sumo bot robot from last year. I'm building a new one. It'll be ESP32 based rather than Arduino based. And it doesn't support remote control. Now I have a few things that we might be able to use. I've got a USB game controller that, as I recall, I plugged it into my Jetson Nano robot and would drive the robot around using that. I will have Wi-Fi access. I've got a variety of ESP32s. I've got Raspberry Pi Z wireless. I've got a Windows laptop. So I'm looking for ideas on how to control the robot, essentially.
Have you tried? I don't know if you have one, but the little robot that I've got will I can use a wireless remote control. I think it's a PS3 or a PS4 controller.
Okay, so there's a USB, there's a Bluetooth dongle or something? Or it must be running Bluetooth if it's wireless.
Yeah, so it's running YouTube,
Bluetooth.
Bluetooth, and the Raspberry Pi, which is can receive Bluetooth.
How about just use 9-axis gyroscope?
Well, that doesn't help
So
you tell the robot to turn right or left, does it?
in mine, sure, right, left, spin around, does everything.
Yeah, I
Yours
just use a
does, but
Bluetooth
Everything
game
on
controller.
on a plane.
but a gyroscope doesn't.
But
So
does.
I'm sorry, Nick, you're breaking up. Is there?
Oh, they have compass.
Okay, but that's not remote control. That's monitoring your orientation.
But if you put one data,
I'm still not following. How does a person tell the robot to turn to a
right?
certain compass setting?
If you sensors that were going out and they put out Bluetooth.
That's the controller that I have.
Yep.
And this is a standard.
Mine is similar, but has a wire.
Yeah. Well,
The
that's not.
Tissot ones without wire is
Can you
pretty cheap.
consider having a wire to be remote control?
No, so I don't want a wire on my robot, but I can hook up my game controller to a different computer. I can hook it up to a Windows laptop and run ROS and run mini ROS on the ESP32. ESP32s support Bluetooth, I guess, but can you?
I was just going to suggest that either ESP32 or Pi Zero kind of a thing that you would wire your controller to, and then it would Bluetooth um, device to talk to the robot.
Yeah, you could technically do it over Wi-Fi, but in my experience, that hasn't been a fun process. You get unexpected latency, which can cause problems.
Yeah.
I have one of those gloves that the BBC made that has a compass built into it and is Bluetooth, I believe.
Right, but my ESP32 robot is not gonna be reading that glove.
Yeah. The only problem with Bluetooth is it gets much more than 20 feet away and you have a runaway robot.
So I don't think range is a problem. The arena is about 10-foot diameter. The driver is allowed to be right up on the perimeter of it, so the robot should be within 10 feet of the. But it's also I'm thinking that there's going to need to be another processor because I don't think that I'm going to be reading the game controller from the processor on the robot. I don't know that. That's what we're
Right.
here to
You'd have to either
discuss.
have wireless to
But
that,
you,
or you'd have something that you could hook it to that would then be like a relay, right?
Yeah. Yep. So I can run ESP now on the robot and get packets that contain, either a guidance of how that we want the navigation to proceed, or it could be the raw.
hey, now there's an idea. How about if you make a little box, put another ESP in there, connect that to the one on the robot, but connect your controller to the one to this little box, which is now remote from the robot, right? So you
Right,
the two ESPs talking to each other, and your joystick with the wire can be plugged into this other little box with an ESP in it.
right. So if I use the wired one, that's USB, and so you need a ESP32 that can act as a USB host. Not all of them can, but some of them can.
P3.
or a Pi Zero.
Or a Pi Zero, or a Jetson, or a
Right. The
Leader
only
Pi.
problem is if you want to connect the two with ESP now, they both got to be ESPs.
Okay.
I mean, far and away,
Or you can just make up your own protocol between the two of them.
Well,
You
you're
have
gonna have
one
to
on the
do that.
robot, one that your controller is wired into, and just make up your own protocol going between the two of them.
yeah,
Using
far and away.
Wi-Fi.
You'd have to do that anyway if you went the two ESP direction.
I mean, far and away, the easiest solution here is just have something that can be a USB host, and then get a wireless game controller. They're $30. Um, there's tons of established libraries. If you have a Pi variant that's being the host, that would allow you to grab those commands super easily.
Okay, and so how does the Raspberry Pi talk to the robot?
So if the Raspberry Pi is connected to your ESP, I imagine you use UART to connect the two.
Um, so you're gonna put the Raspberry Pi on the robot?
I mean, I haven't done too much with the small Raspberry Pi variants, but they can get pretty darn tiny, can't they?
Yeah, the Raspberry Pi Zero's small.
Do
Can
they
they
handle
operate as a
USB
USB
though?
host?
It's gonna need more power.
Do the small Raspberry Pis handle USB though?
Yeah.
Or I should say Bluetooth, because that's the whole trick, right? You don't want a wire.
No, the wireless game controllers have those dongles, so all you need to do is plug in the USB, and then you can use
Okay,
STL
yeah,
or
I can
any
do
of the
that.
game libraries to very easily grab the controller state. I mean, that's more or less what I did with my robot prototype. Now, the range issue is real, and a good way to deal with that in a different scenario is to make sure if you don't get commands within X amount of time, you hit the brakes.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're not going to have that issue in this environment.
Yeah, writing the code for this is non-trivial though.
I mean, I'd be happy to share the control code that I use. I'm using a Jetson Nano, and I think it'd be portable. I can even give you the SKU of the game controller I'm using. Looks fine.
turning Raspberry Pi off and on when you turn your robot off and on, and waiting for it to boot, and knowing that it has booted without a monitor, and corrupting the SD card when you power it off without shutting it down. All those things tell me not to put a Raspberry Pi on my robot. So if I were going to do it, I'd put the Raspberry Pi somewhere and have a serial to a ESP32 that could talk to the robot using
I mean, I
ESP
haven't
Now
had
or something.
many issues on that front with the Nano being the primary controller for my robot. I mean, your mileage may vary, but my experience, the perfectly
Yeah, but
stable
you
systems.
boot yours and you shut it down, right? Or do you just yank the power?
Mostly, I just yank the power.
I've had numerous times where my Raspberry Pis have corrupted the SD card because I powered them off without shutting them down.
Hmm.
And what a pain it is to have to recreate that.
I wonder if there's any differences in the SD cards we're using, perhaps, or something along those lines, because I haven't had any issues on that front as of yet. I mean, the main hardware I had was related to rain.
I just found a PDF on how to get Bluetooth networking to work on an ESP32. You want me to post it?
Sure. Is that between two ESP32s using Bluetooth to communicate?
I don't know. I didn't read it. I just I just found it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I did some Googling, and there's all kinds of examples of using an ESP32 as a game controller. Having it drive a USB cable that you stick into your PC or your PlayStation or whatever, and it, knows how to talk USB and do the right things to be a game controller. So that's not what I want to do. Um, and so it was a little difficult segregating which way the USB was going, whether it was going into the ESP32 or out of the ESP32.
The C3s that I have USB to go, which will work in either direction.
Right. Yep. The C2 and the C3 support USB Go, which is USB host. The I think I have an S2, and I don't think that one supports it, and I don't think the vanilla ESP32 supports it.
There is also code out there for a tiny USB, which is just a 10 megahertz, but it's just bit banging pins.
Well, that was the library that I saw that Espressive recommends you use if you want to
Okay.
hook up a USB device to their C2 or C3 chips. So roll my own protocol, you think, between the as opposed to using ROS2 or something? Charlie, have you done any ROS stuff?
Yeah, I did a Ardu drone, if you're familiar with those, back in 2013 or so, I think. And that was controlled over Wi-Fi. I found that there were more latency issues than I'd like. But hey, that was several standards ago, so it might be better now.
Was that from congestion on your Wi-Fi network or
I wouldn't think so,
okay?
but at the same time, it was set up in several different areas, one of which was a university, so that could have had something to do with it, because mine was not the only network around. For all I know, someone's downloading gigabytes of files right next to where my router was located.
Okay.
I posted another link on a guide for getting Bluetooth working on an ESP32.
Any other ideas?
I mean, could you do it straight from your phone with a little, kind of like the Edger way, like a little JavaScript app or something that was just had some buttons and I mean, at the simplest that I've done something like this, the little Tetris game is just when you press a button, it makes like a rest call slash right slash left slash up slash down. But again, there's some layers there. I don't know if that's fast enough for what you want, but it could be a fairly simple using something that the ESP32 already has.
So run the ESP as an access point and connect your phone to it and run this little app.
Yeah,
makes
or
sense.
have them both on the same network. Yeah, how you would do it over Wi-Fi. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't even have to be an app. You can just write a simple HTML page with
Oh, yeah, run a
links.
web server on the. Yep. I've done that. Well, that's an interesting thought. I think that navigation, right, left, forward, backward is all that I'm imagining using for this competition. Having some line following assist would be cool if you could do it, but I don't think I would have time to implement any of that in the 3 weeks between sumo bots and space schlepping.
Yeah. The other, cool thing about that, I guess, versus a controller is you could add other commands like do a 180 or, full right turn or, 180 and back up or however, you could have some little things, an array of just custom commands that might be handy for that specific situation.
Yeah. Yep. And if you had a magnetometer, you could go to a compass heading that took you to the center of the board or something like that. There are these. The board is divided up into 6 wedges, and the 6 robots start off in those wedges. That's an interesting thought. Yep.
Are you guys familiar at all with microbit?
Microbit, yeah.
The BBC microbit thing.
Right.
Yeah, can that communicate with a Arduino or a ESP controller?
Sure.
Because
Software serial.
I was just looking online, and it looks like there's some sort of simple game controller that people have made on Amazon, and you could maybe just plug in, and that would you get serial that you could forward over your network. Oop. Might simplify your interfacing if you could just forward that directly to your microcontroller.
All right. Other ideas? Infrared blinking IR beacon or something? For communicating is a possibility. I like ESP now. I've had pretty good success with that.
What does that do?
So there is a in the Wi-Fi spec, there is a provision for vendor-specific packets, and Espressive has developed a protocol that uses this vendor-specific packet, so they can send a 256 byte packet over Wi-Fi, and you don't have to hook into an access point and log in with passphrases and whatnot. You can either broadcast or specify an IP address or a MAC address of who you want to receive it. And you send this packet out, and anybody that's listening for ESP Now gets it, and you can send a payload of, it's like 240 bytes. The remainder is used for this overhead. But I can wake up from deep sleep, read a sensor of some sort, send out an ESP Now packet with that data in it, and go back to sleep in under 50 milliseconds. Whereas if I have to hook up to a Wi-Fi access point, it takes hundreds and hundreds of milliseconds to do all that. And so it's a
So what do you have on the other side of it? I mean, is there a client, a PC library for the ESP Now, or do you need to have another ESP on the other side, or what?
there has to be another ESP. I have seen reference to some code that runs on a Raspberry Pi, but I haven't seen it really working. So it's certainly, if you have access to the Wi-Fi stack, and you should be able to sniff one of these packets and figure out what the overhead, the protocol for the first 20 bytes is or whatever, and make your own. But
So could you hook like a joystick or something into your ESP32 and into a second ESP32 and just have that?
Yeah.
Read that and send the controls.
Yes. Yeah. So
And
you
that'll be
have to
intuitive. If you had a joystick, that would work, right? But it probably doesn't read the USB, so you need something else, maybe like a wired joystick. Probably like an Atari joystick would work just fine.
Yep. I think I have one, but I guess I could. Can I control a robot with one? I guess I could. I do have just an analog joystick that I could read the resistance values on. That's an option too. I don't really need a full game controller with all the buttons and things, but having some buttons to, turn 90 degrees or 180 degrees might be useful. But you can always put a little button or two next to your joystick and read that from the ESP.
And this is a competition, right?
It is.
And so would it be playing dirty to, if you've got your ESP Now, to sniff for others and then start sending them rogue packets?
Yep, that would not be appreciated.
Okay.
It's supposed to be a friendly competition. You can block opponents, but you can only do so for some number of seconds, and then you have to let them go.
You mean physically block them?
Right. Get your robot in their way. They try to do what's it? There's I forget what the word. It's a meshing of cooperation and competition.
Co-opetition?
Something like that,
Yeah.
So it's not battle bots. All right. Any other ideas?
That isn't the sumo bot thing, is it?
It is a second competition organized by the same people that are doing the sumo bots, and many of the teams are planning on modifying or building their sumo robot with the space schlepping in mind, so that within a couple of weeks they can make the transition. And many of the people that are doing sumo bots are using microbit, and these the remote control stuff that already exists for the microbits is going to be used for that. All right, well, thanks for that. Let me go back to my PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to... So last month, the problem of the month was how to reduce the volume of a toy that my granddaughter was given. And I sent out some data on the mailing list. And I thought I would give a little bit of more of supporting data. So this is a scope shot of the signal at the speaker. So this is the raw data as the toy was manufactured. I'm assuming that this is one note and this is another note in the song that was being played. I'm not exactly sure what these little things in the middle, maybe there are other notes as well. And so we talked about L pads and putting capacitors in series and things. And so here is the same song, not necessarily the same notes, with a 47 ohm resistor in series. You know, the profile of this looks much more rounded. If I go back to the raw one, they're kind of, I see these sawtooth patterns in the wave. Don't know quite how that...
It's killing high frequency response is what it's doing.
Okay. So the amplitude doesn't look much different to me. It definitely sounds quieter.
Yeah,
And
it's
then,
probably not as screechy.
Yeah, by reducing some of the frequency components, what you're doing is you're reducing the total power in the waveform itself, and that's why it sounds a little bit less.
okay. And then this is with a capacitor in series. And this one looks quite a bit different, and the baseline kind of waves up and down. You know, my old ears, I can't hear anything above 6.5 kilohertz. I went to a science museum and they said, you know, here's 12 kilohertz. If you're 10 years old, you can hear this. Here's 10 kilohertz. If you're 20 years old, you can hear this. Here's 8 kilohertz. Everybody can hear this. I couldn't hear it. I have a thermometer, electronic thermometer that beeps when the temperature is settled, and I can't hear that. I have to have my wife listen to it for... And so my ears, as far as telling the difference in how these things sound, is probably not a good judge of what's really happening. So reducing high frequencies to me is probably a non-operation because I can't hear any of the high frequencies anyhow. But so I'm sure there are, you know, spectrum analyzers and Fourier transforms of these things that would tell us all kinds of other good stuff that I don't understand. But I thought I would present these and see if anybody else had any thoughts. So my plan is to put the 47 ohm resistor in series and button it back up and see what my daughter thinks of it.
She might tell you to take it back to the drawing board for a little while, just so it'll be out of the house longer.
she may. It's definitely kind of annoying. It does have a mode, so it has a microphone, and so if you talk to it, it will repeat back what you said and dance the cactus back and forth a little bit. All right, Nick, do you want to talk about your time thing?
Well, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I bought a little while ago a pretty good frequency counter, a 14 gigahertz, not brand new, obviously, HP machine, and one of the options for it was a 10 megahertz oven that controlled the crystal. And I was looking on eBay for used 10 megahertz, and came across these things that are called disciplined GPS receivers, disciplined GPS oscillators, and they had 10 megahertz outputs, and so I figured I would get one, which I did on eBay. They were a lot cheaper than the Hewlett Packard oscillator, and what I got was this board here, which has
That's a lot of stuff. How much did it cost?
FPGA, an oven-controlled crystal, a lot of stuff, and it is connected into a GPS antenna, which is not bad for $50. And I did some dicking around with it and found there's a program called Lady Heather, which runs it and gives you the position of all the satellites it's tracking, its error signal, its temperature is controlled within micro degrees according to the screen. And it takes about 24 hours to settle down to 1 part in a billion. Now, Pete has a rubidium or a cesium standard, which is a lot faster, obviously, but slightly more expensive. And this thing, I have it in the house, which means it's not getting any satellites currently. So the time and date on it is wrong. If you run it for months, 4 or 5 months, you can get. They claim about 10 to the 13th. It after a couple hours, maybe a day, it gets down to 1 part in a billion, 10 to the 9th, which okay. 10 to the 9th is not a it puts out a 10 megahertz sine wave that hooks directly into my frequency counter, and it has an internal oven on it, which seems to stabilize quite nicely. And so it.
Are you saying oven like it's heating it up?
Yes.
So this is just to keep the crystal at a specific temperature?
Yes, the crystal is at a very precise temperature, which you can control within millidegrees.
And what is that temperature roughly? Is it close to room temperature or high?
You can set it to whatever you want. I've set it to 40 degrees.
Celsius?
Yep.
Okay.
And it's now, it takes it a while to zero in. But this is the board is obviously a commercial board. It's got a DAC on it. It's got several DACs on it, which I presume are better than 16-bit. Its temperature, you can set the temperature to whatever you want. The reading is in microdegrees, and I presume it's a Vericap that's driving the oscillator, and that's also at least 16 bits. So it's for $50. It was a hell of a lot cheaper than buying the Hewlett Packard plug-in thing, and I've got a little board that has 7 phase lock loops on it that locks to the 10 megahertz oscillator and will give me frequencies, square wave frequencies, anywhere from 30 kilohertz to 180 megahertz. And it's got an LCD display, so I can put out whatever frequencies I want, which is kind of nice. And they would be accurate to 1 part in a billion, which I don't really need. But it was just it was a good idea. I spent money on the frequency counter, which is an old and prestigious model from Hewlett Packard. And I don't have much going on at 18 gigahertz that I need to count, but if I did, I could. And I've got a whole bunch of odd connectors that I could connect to things if I had something running at 18 gigahertz, but I don't. So I'm quite happy. The lady Heather, who is written by let me see if I can turn this around. That's the I can't get it on the screen because of the way it's written, but it presents all sorts of useful data.
Nick, you muted yourself as you turned your phone back around.
Okay. There. I'm going to set it up on a car battery in my little lab, and have it lock in over a long period of time. And then I can wait around for the 1 second in 10,000 years that it's wrong, which is about what it's supposed to be. So it's I was just looking for an oven controlled crystal, but this for $50 was a lot cheaper than the Hewlett Packard oven controlled crystal, and I'm quite happy with it. So that's my report on that.
Thank you. That's cool.
Do you have any use cases in mind for it?
No.
Just toy, just fun.
Well, I wanted the frequency counter. I needed the frequency counter, so I found one on eBay that was like $200, and it was an 18 gigahertz frequency counter. So I got it, and I unpacked it and smiled at it and stroked it and said, "Ooh, I can measure 18 gigahertz." And then I looked at the options available, and it said, "Well, if you can put an oven crystal on," and I was very impressed by the fact that I could have an oven controlled crystal on it. And then I got this thing for $50, and I'm generally after it's just a toy.
So if you don't have the oven controlled crystal, what's the
Probably
accuracy?
1 part in 10 million.
Okay.
It's about 100 times more accurate and it's I cannot think of a blessed reason why I need that. But Pete, who isn't here, so Pete has a rubidium standard, which I also can't see any blessed reason for, and he spent a lot more on his rubidium standard than I did on my. So, it's I'm not the only person that likes his toys.
Yep.
But yeah, I've got some very high performance A to D converters that I wanted to be able to run software defined radios on. And I had some ideas which I'll never get around to about how to do that. So it's I won't get around to it, but it's nice to dream of such things.
All right. Thanks for that.
I'm also, if anyone's concerned, I have a proposal out to detect aflatoxins in peanuts. If anyone has the least bit of interest in peanuts. Oh, Carl.
In harvested peanuts or in
Yes,
growing
in harvest,
peanuts?
in harvest and in fields. And the thing that I noticed, Carl, was this has probably half a dozen different clock standards on it. I did not have Baha'i time. I looked. It didn't have a Baha'i clock. I looked. It has everything else. Ramadan, but not Baha'i.
Yeah, it won't be common.
Yeah, well, it's I would have been real happy if it had Baha'i time within 1 part per billion, and I'm sure I'd have brought a smile to your face. I looked.
There is an online website that actually the guy also makes an app with the Baha'i calendar, but he has a website that if you can go to and see what the time, not the time, but the day, month, year, yada yada yada.
Well, I was hoping that it had Baha'i time, so I could build a Baha'i
Frequency counter.
NTP server, a time server that would be blessedly accurate.
So how are you detecting the aflatoxins?
I'm looking at various markers, spectral markers.
Okay.
I have the trick is not for me detecting the aflatoxin. I've got a bunch of UV spectrometers, and I can. It has a marker like 335 nanometers that you can pick up. I've got a grant proposal, which I hope is coming in. That I'm looking for. The problem is that there are a whole bunch of other proteins that muck up the signal, and I've got various techniques to separate out those other signals, and that's the trick. If I've got spectrometers, a handheld spectrometer that I built that has enough range to be able to pick it up, but I don't know what the background signals are. I don't know what the other proteins are doing. So that's but as I say, it took me 2 weeks to get permission to get aflatoxin. I had to sign away all sorts of paper that said that I wasn't going to poison anyone, which was untrue. But so I have shipped to me some aflatoxin, and I went to Food Lion, and they had a big open box of peanuts, and I selected only the moldy ones.
They were happy to see you, I guess.
Yeah, they were. And I'm pretty sure the moldy ones are aflatoxin. The aflatoxin that I ordered is reference samples, so I can work out what the concentration is. But I have a whole bunch of moldy peanuts under a rather expensive Zeiss microscope.
Anybody else have show and tell?
I do. So I talked a bit about the robot last week or last month. I have a new version of the chassis, and I will hopefully have a new version of that new version by the end of the week. Last time I showed you guys the half-inch chassis, and I mentioned how it's a major pain in the butt to manufacture. I now have one that is not flawless, but is considerably better on that front. So right here is the new one, and put it up. So the cool thing with this one, I haven't mounted the PCBs or the motors or anything, but there's actually a few different cool things. Thing number one, the entire outer shell, one sheet of plastic. So you just load it all into the Shapeoko 3 extra large that I've got, and it's one job, finishes in under 10 minutes. and it makes the entire outer shell. And then you can put on the folder, and it's between 10 to 5 to 10 minutes for each of these folds. I think I've got it down to about 5 or 6 plus the cooling time. But that's one of those things I'm iterating on. The corners were manually welded, but I'm working on making that better and having something. Basically, if I can get a hot piece of metal to press against it and then cool down after it melts it enough, then that makes a pretty nice, pretty smooth weld actually. So that's the outer shell, and then in the inner shell, inner part where the battery goes, I've got these nice pieces that you can pop in and out. So right here. So these pop in and out. And the cool thing there is that it serves two purposes. One, the big old battery. One moment. This guy. So this big old battery sits in that compartment. And not only does it sit in that compartment, it sits in there with about a centimeter of foam insulation on each side. So it's nice and vibration isolated. And the cool thing here is that this is 4 pieces that all fit together nicely. So once they're machined, you can just put them on a flat surface and go pop, 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 and you have something that sits there and holds itself in all the right positions. And then I made 2 jigs, one on each side, and you just pop those against the walls, and that will center it very, very nicely. And then you take that same plastic welder and go voop, voop, voop around the edges, and in a very relatively short time, it's very well secured. And then I have this piece, which I finally worked out all the issues with getting it to fold nicely. And that pops in the front, and this is actually the part that I'm most unhappy about. So it pops in okay-ish. The front is a little bit tight. Here, one moment. And this is supposed to have, sorry, a moment, if you guys are willing.
And this
It's
is
a
your
little
sensor tray.
Yeah, that's the plan for this one, but I didn't fully like how it came out in that you can get it on, but it's a bit, oh, yeah, okay, that is lined up right. Yeah. So you can pop it in, and it works. I mean, it fits in, and you can put in the plate and have the Jetson Nano here, hey, bolted in, and have the camera here and be able to pop it in and out. But the seal around this side is kind of wonky. There's not that much space, and frankly, I think there's a better solution. So the next iteration that I'm doing basically gets rid of this whole pop-out section and puts the holes for the camera right here on the same sheet of plastic. And then rather than having this whole pop in, pop out compute module, what I'm going to do is actually have some brass threaded inserts right there so that you can just have a sheet of plastic that has more threaded inserts and then you can put all your compute stuff in. You can get all the cables hooked up and then just slide it down and tighten 2 screws and ta-da, your Jetson Nano is mounted. And likewise, if you want to switch to a different type of sensor, you'll notice it's not super visible, but do you see these little holes right here on the side?
Yep.
So
Yeah, we can see them.
I was originally going to do threaded inserts on all of these, but the problem is if you actually have significant forces, the thread inserts pull out too easily for at least this thickness of plastic. So instead, what I've got is carriage bolts, and I'm going to put little plastic stoppers in these things. So if you want to mount anything on any of the sides, you can just stick a washer and a nice bolt and bolt it to this plastic, get a nice, good, secure grip. And you can bolt anything you want on the side or on the front. You can bolt anything on the back. You can bolt anything on the side with these 2 holes here between the 2 wheels. And likewise, I'm putting thread inserts on the inside for the not so heavy stuff, so that on any side of this battery, you can bolt whatever you want. And then if you want to have a different type of sensor than the camera that I'm doing right now, you can either one, drill holes, or you'll notice that it's got these two pairs of holes in the front. Those are going to stay there. So you can actually run your cables through this thing here, and put all your compute and all of your sensors in an additional module in the front. And I'm going to try and make that so that you can, if you want to go a different route, you can just buy the module, and then that bolts in nicely right here. And I can go into the detail on how that module is going to be shaped. But basically, it'd make it so you'd have a bit more of an issue running into stuff, because it'll protrude out from the wheels a bit more. But you could have more or less as much space as you want. Very spacious. What do you guys think?
It looks like you put a lot of
Awesome,
thought
so-
into it.
Well, I've been trying. I'm trying to get the hardware solid and easy to manufacture so that it'll be.
Are you planning to commercially do these robots?
Hopefully, the business plan is 3-tiered. So there's the hardware, and I'm going to open source everything. So if you want to just buy it from me, that's the easy way. But all of the G code and everything is going to be published, as well as the print circuit board, et cetera, et cetera. But there's the just straight selling of the hardware, and then I'm going to try and build a open source software company on top of that to assemble data sets. And have you guys been following what's going on with the LLMs and stuff much?
Yeah, a little bit.
Things are getting crazy really fast, and one of the interesting things to come out of that is that you can submit a picture to one of these models and say, hey, is there a person real close in that picture? Hey, is there an obstacle? If so, if I was trying to avoid it, should I turn left or right? So you can basically make text quizzes and have what a somewhat intelligent person would say regarding that image. So the plan I've got for how to proceed with getting the good behavior out of this takes advantage of some of the stuff I learned doing imitation learning with this, which is that if you can tell it what it's supposed to do and get a decent amount of training data, it actually generalizes really well, even on the sort of models that can run on these edge computers. So what you need is a big old data set with lots of different edge cases and stuff, where you can tell it what it should be doing at each of those moments in time. So the plan is make a bunch of these robots, or have a bunch of other people have these robots too, and aggregate all that data, and then have it bump into stuff and be dumb and just have issues. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I made this thing so gosh darn sturdy. And then you can go through and you can take all of these cool zero-shot models that people have made that can do stuff like highlighting all the people in the image, highlighting all the obstacles. Like you can literally type in text and have it say, oh, things that match that text description that you gave me, yeah, I'll highlight those. And then you can submit it to these larger models and have it actually, you say questions like, hey, am I about to hit somebody? And I think with reasonable certainty, it will be able to say yes or no. And so you aggregate all this, then you generate all of this data on top of it using these zero-shot models. And then you submit it to a reinforcement learning setup that tries to do offline reinforcement learning and determine, hey, what should I have done to not crash? Which should be much, much easier given the fact that it has all this metadata from the other zero-shot models that you can easily verify. And then you take that and you distill it down to, hey, if you see this, turn left. If you see that, turn right. If you see this, hit the brakes.
How many cameras do you have on there?
Currently, I have one 160-degree angle camera just on the front. Now,
How big are the wheels?
let me show you the old model. One sec.
So how does it see
They're
behind
hinged.
itself
It doesn't. It turns
or to the
around.
sides?
Well, 160 is pretty wide angle view.
Yeah.
If you're driving forward, that's what you care about, right? Is Don't hit what's in front of you and figure out whether you should turn right or left.
If I recall, it's about 18 centimeters in diameter, but I'd have to double check. But this is what your side view would be.
So the thing is okay, you want to turn left or right, but you've got to know if there's something coming up on your right or left to truly
Not
be
at the
safe.
to truly be absolutely 100% safe. That would be great. But this thing is moving at a moderate walking speed, so you have a lot more leeway than a lot of other robotic systems. It can also brake incredibly fast because you have a four-wheel drive. Basically, if you detect any sort of fault that you're concerned about, you can just ground all of the motor coils and they immediately act as a brake very, very effectively. Like we're talking less than half a second to stop.
Yeah. I know the idea. So
I prefer
It
just
would.
put a high voltage supply on it and have the people get out the way.
did you design your own H bridges and whatnot, or are you using something else, an off the shelf thing?
It's a ST Drive 101 chip is the main motor H-bridge driver. I have 4 of those, but it's all integrated into the one board.
Oh, so
If you're
you've designed the
familiar,
board and used those chips and whatnot.
yeah, the whole board, all 4 controllers for all 4 motors are all integrated into this and has a STM32 G0, as I recall, controlling all of it.
Can I ask you why you didn't decide to create a isolated units for each motor and then bring them together instead of putting everything on a single board?
Mostly because I knew that the wire lengths were going to be short enough that wouldn't cause a problem. And I thought that would be cheaper and easier to assemble this way. I have flirted with that approach, um, but as is, unless I break out the motors further away, I don't think it makes much sense. I mean, you could, but I thought that would be easier with less parts.
Well, I don't know if you'd really have less parts. You'd have a little bit more wiring, but it would also be more modular. So if one decided to self-destruct, you can unplug it, plug in a new one, off you go.
Fair. On the flip side, as it stands, you have, instead of 4 printed circuit boards, you have just one. And rather than having to do the 2 big power wires to each of these, as well as the control from the high-level microcontroller, as well as the connections to the Hall sensors, if I can get the people that make these motors to lengthen the wires a little bit and make it, I've already gotten them to make a compatible connector, but if I can get them to just lengthen the wires a little bit, then literally you will put the board in the thing on top of the battery and plug, screw in, screw in, screw in the 3 motor phase wires, you're done. Your whole thing's installed, it's ready to go. So I'm hoping that'll make assembly very easily. Like I would hope it is obvious that I put a lot of thought into making this really tough and really cheap and really easy to assemble. But we'll see how that works out in practice. I've also I was originally using individual VESC motor controllers, and frankly, those were expensive enough that I think it would drive the thing to be too expensive to be feasible.
I
So
would be quite happy to run the thing at the upcoming show for you, if you trust me.
yeah,
If you trust
again,
me,
this is
cool, but that's okay.
yeah. If you're willing to, I'd love to get set up with a controller. I can make a display, and I figured I'd make a few extra chassis so that people could poke and prod at them.
Yeah, I've got
I've
some
only
experience with that kind of stuff, so I know how to break them.
well, again, one of my early experiences with this project was my dad crashing it within 5 to 10 minutes of me handing him one to drive. So
I
yeah.
designed the servo mechanisms that retract and extend the landing gear for the space shuttle. And every time that thing landed, I figured that the landing gear was going to collapse. And the next morning, I would be in front of a Senate committee.
Fair. I'm more worried about the walls of the arena.
I was worried about, it was, but anyway, so I do have a little bit of experience doing that stuff.
That would be great if you're willing. I'm going to line up the next chassis. Will hopefully be done in under a week. I've almost got all the G code and stuff made for it, and then I will set up so it just can drive around with a game controller. I figure that's the easiest way to do it.
If I can help, I will.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So that's about all I got on this.
Have a quick one.
Okay.
I'm gonna just share this. It's kind of a show and tell and a funny story. Can you see that?
Yep.
Is that a
So
rowing machine?
yeah, a guy rowing machine for like I don't know, $700 to $1,000 rowing machine for $70 because the console didn't work. And so basically I figured out how to count the little things and made my it's got a reed switch or something as the magnets on the wheel go by it. So you can count that. And anyway, made it how I liked it. Perfectly fine working. I just had this weird problem that after sometimes I would pull the thing really hard, or after a few pulls or whatever, the light on the ESP32 would just turn on bright green and blindingly green. So like in this picture, there's a little piece of electrical tape on top of that. But actually, I thought about it for a while and I couldn't figure that out. And I thought maybe there was some electrostatic something going on. It didn't make any sense to me why that would happen. But I finally realized that the pin I was using was pin 8, GPIO 8 was using to detect that reed switch thing, which is the RGB LED. So I guess that somehow it must have got the WS322812 or whatever command for turning on green by spitting this, pretty fast pulses by it. I don't know exactly how that worked, but it was pretty consistent that every time I turned it on after some period of time, it would turn on green.
That's interesting.
And so I switched it to another spare pin in it, and it hasn't happened. So I don't need the tape there anymore.
Huh?
So did you get that controller working?
Yeah, it works. I don't really hold on. I'll bring this back up. So what I did. So basically, this is just telling me the active time. So once it's active, it'll start counting up seconds. And then if I stop, it'll start counting up rest seconds here. And then as soon as I start active again, the rest seconds zeros, but the active time just, it just pauses basically and goes up from where it was. And then this middle one is, it's basically power. I called it power, but it's like, it's just, oh, nice. I don't think it's me, but
Everybody killing Mike.
It's Scott.
So
Sorry about that. Trying to find the mute. Can somebody mute me for me?
there we go.
I got him.
Oh, anyway, so this, it's basically the number. I've got a sample every I forget if it's a half a second or quarter second, and it just how many impulses it has counted for that thing in the last time, and then this one beside it is just the total number of impulses, and then above it I made a little. It's funny. I went and I found this online. There was a. It's called open rowing, and this guy went into like very in depth into mathematics of, the physical, trying to simulate the physical something that's going on. It was I. Maybe I could have used that. It was on a Raspberry Pi, and it was way too complicated, and I just preferred to build this up simply with things I could understand and have it do what I wanted. But anyway, I did end up using some kind of smoothing algorithm for used for like 5 samples to determine the derivative to understand when it goes from when the distance between the pulses, actually the number of pulses per quarter second goes from increasing to decreasing to figure out what is a stroke, and then that is just the calculation of strokes per second and then the total strokes there. So it's plenty fine, and it seems to, the stroke thing seems to match up like with, this is my little phone sitting here on a bracket, and there's videos you can watch, and if you kind of follow that guy and he says you were going 22 strokes per second, it seems to match up pretty well with that. There's other things that I can do. You talk about H-bridge. I am going to get into that because there's a magnetic adjust, which is just a DC motor with positive moves it one way, negative moves it another way, and then there's a potentiometer that gives you feedback about where that is from max to minimum or whatever. But it's plenty hard for me with it on the minimum, so I just hooked some power to it and moved the magnet out of the way and leave it there for now.
So you did not try to fix the
I
electronic.
did do that. I did take that apart, and there was like multiple layers of it. Inside there was kind of like a little tablet thing, and then there was a board attached to the tablet, and so it was like a board inside the plastic case, and then another. I don't know. There was 2 different boards, and the one board was connected to the tablet with like a USB and micro USB. And that board, like with everything unplugged, there was a short between the power and the ground, and I have no idea.
Yes,
It was beyond my.
You rolled your own using the existing sensors, the Hall
Yeah,
sensor,
there's these
whatever,
little
read
clip
sensor or whatever for the.
things. Yeah, it's very simple. There's that sensor. There was the power coming up from the chassis, and then there's on the other side there's like the motor control wires and the potentiometer coming back from the motor. So there wasn't a whole lot. It seemed pretty simple to just do something that'll work. And honestly, when I would use the one at the gym, I really mostly just look at the time. Like, anyway, that was my little project.
All right, next.
Real fast. How do you guys think bumper car robots would go? If I made 2 of these and put like padding and stuff on, do you think people would enjoy that?
Controlled by what? Autonomous, or you get to drive them?
Nah,
You get to
game
drive them and bump
controllers.
each other?
Yeah.
Yeah, but isn't it like physically a little small for that?
I don't mean that people would be on them, but
Oh, okay.
That would be
robots
funny
that
though.
you have permission to slam together.
Yeah. I was going to say people would get hurt.
Yeah,
That's the
no
point.
people.
That's the point. Leave it to Nick.
Just a thought.
Sumo bots push each other out of the ring. Kind of bumper car.
You could do it like that. I mean, I'm worried.
What is the name of that contest where they make a bot out of anything and do a racing contest type of thing?
Bot out of anything.
Pete Soper and Peter Renches used to run a contest with the kids for that.
I don't think I've ever heard about that. It's a racing thing?
Well, it's first of all, they race down a little track, Hot Wheels style, or like Pinewood Derby style, to see who's faster. And then at the bottom, the robots themselves are supposed to go after each other.
Nope, never heard of it.
If I did go that route, what do you guys think the bumpers should be made of?
Titanium.
Ah! Old car tires. I don't know.
Neoprene.
Okay. Just thinking, the bolt-on architecture is useful in that respect because you could bolt it on each of these things.
So First Robotics requires you to have a skirt around your robot to prevent harming other robots if you happen to bump into them. And it's kind of a vinyl plastic stuff that's sewn around some kind of foam. I'm sure we could get the details from the Forge people.
I remember the name of the contest. It's called a Hebacon.
With a B, H-E-B?
Hebocon, I think. Or it could be a BA. BE, maybe.
We'll have to Google that. It says bacon.
I take it shape charges are not allowed in this.
No.
Oh, damn.
One-time use only.
But they're very effective.
He boy is Japanese for clumsy or crappy. If your idea of fun is poorly made but hilarious robots trying to shove each other out of a sumo, Crappy Robots World Championship. I'll have to stick that in the...
Here's an old message from Don Trebeth. It's spelled Hebocon.
Hebocon.
Triple Spectrum.
Robot contest for dummies.
There you go.
The best worst robot competition. Try to build the crappiest robots they can.
The one that actually won was a couple of servos mounted on a toilet paper roll with wheels connected to the servos.
Uh-huh. That's cool.
Oh, no, it wasn't regular wheels. It was those push sticks from those orange popsicle things.
Okay.
They use those for tires.
Yeah. The push-up popsicle things.
Yep.
Okay.
That's the one that won the Hebocon because it seemed to be the most destructing of the others and least destructive of itself.
So our next meeting is after the 6th, right? The 8th. Yep.
Yeah, it's after the Razfest.
Okay.
Just a couple of days.
I get a quickie question with regards to RARs and your guys knowing whom. Do you know if Rodney is going to participate at all this year?
I haven't even seen Rodney in 6 months, maybe.
He'd be the perfect guy to coordinate the robots beyond what Forge Initiative's doing. Because he ran TAR for all those years.
Yeah, I might reach out to him.
As a matter of fact, Charles, if Rodney had it on, if we had TAR have a table out there and Rodney doing that, we could put your robot on that table.
I thought Tar died.
It did officially.
TAR died, yeah.
But Rodney could represent, I suppose.
It was kind of on its way out even before COVID.
Well, it died the biggest dive from the deletion of the Yahoo group.
Yeah, and the IEEE thing was a little weird. I mean, free pizza was nice, but did the humanoid robot group die, or is that still going on?
I don't think anybody's coordinating it or running it or doing anything.
I think it's
That's
in a
why I was hoping.
storage closet somewhere. They don't have space at
That's
the
why I was hoping
forge.
to reach out to Rodney and see because it seems to be a renewed new interest in the area for robots. Maybe he'd like to resurrect the SAR group.
I can talk to him about that if he's interested.
And a table at the Hamfest would be a good place to get it restarted because they'll have kids out there and everything, doing robotics.
Yep, that'd be cool.
He was there at the Hamfest for so many years, even before Trilug was. Trilug is kind of fizzled now too.
Oh, yeah. That has been going on for how long? When was TriEmbed founded?
It's been around a long time.
I'm going to say 94-ish, 95-ish, maybe.
And it's fizzled out. They're not meeting anymore.
No, in fact, I don't even know who has the banners in the material form.
That's nuts. Was it COVID that finished them off, or just gradual
Pretty
decline?
much. They pretty much died around COVID time.
Are you guys on the mailing list? I had to change my email, so
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, if it
And
wasn't for Gypsy, we'd
supposedly
been dead
Pilot's
too.
still running, so somebody's still administering it. I don't know if it's Kevin or whom.
do we want to reach out to them and see if they want to try and? I mean, if there's do we have a shortage of tables, or should we try and get them back up?
I've already reached out to them in this email to have them join us. Every year I have, and like last year, they never showed up, and we ended up stretching out on top of the table we had assigned to them.
Okay. Well, that sounds pretty definitive.
In fact, that's happened for a couple of years now. Paul, you remember I tried to set up a Trilug table for 3 years now? Nobody showed up.
They never show up. Yep.
And I don't have time to go over there on their table and give away free Linux copies because that's mostly what they did was had a bunch of Linux DVDs, for the cost of media. And then they had a ham radio distribution that you can still get images for off of DistroWatch. So they would have those two available at the Hamfest. And they were talking up open source, but nobody's been there for 3 years now. I've offered a table each year.
Yeah, there used to be an NC State Linux group too, but that died, I think, pre-COVID. But they used to.
Trilug used to meet at the Red Hat when they were on Centennial campus. And then when they moved off at Centennial, Trilug would meet over at remember the guy that used to sponsor the Trilug meetings over there in Textiles?
I went to a few of their meetings, but I don't remember.
Yeah, so
specifically.
Trilug would meet with the professor in the building next door to that.
I think the problem with the Linux interest group now is just Linux is so mainstream. Like interest groups are usually for niche things where you can bond on something, right?
Yeah.
There's a Linux around every corner now.
Well, yeah,
I mean, maybe
no.
Linux on desktop, like people that are like all Linux all the time. Maybe that's
I mean,
where it should go.
I mean,
I'm Linux all the time, but I've been Linux all the time for more than 20 years.
Yeah.
So I think the majority of people still have no clue what Linux is.
I thought it was just the sysadmin hangout for the most part.
Well, I know the several places I've worked in the last year, they tended to be Windows shops, even though I had a Linux workstation to do my development on. But even in the embedded systems world, they're compiling and they're building the final builds in Linux, but everybody works in Windows.
Yeah.
And now you got VS Code, there's no reason to.
Yeah. My argument has always been build on the machine that you're deploying to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot
Nobody
of
does
things are in
that.
the cloud nowadays. Have you
I
guys
mean,
tried?
The problem is I couldn't do that at Cisco. Cisco absolutely required that I use Windows. So I ran a VM on Windows and ran Linux in the VM and did all my development in the VM.
Fair.
well, the company I'm at right now won't allow for a VM, but they do allow for what is that? Windows Linux services or something like that.
WSL, Windows Support of
Yeah.
Linux.
That's pretty good though. I'll use that all the time.
Between that and Get Bash, I've got most of the tools that I need.
Yeah.
What was the old thing you used to install on Windows to get a Unix environment?
Sigwin.
Yeah, Sigwin, right.
I still
There
run
were
that.
two of Ming
Is
W
that
and
even
Sigwin.
around anymore?
Yeah.
Yep. Sigwin's still around, and so is Ming W.
Yeah, that was the other one.
As a matter of fact, I was installing Docker or something at that company last year that I worked at, and they were using a form of Ming W.
Yeah, my Windows machine was, I have one machine that dates, it's so old. My dad passed away in 2015, and I took his machine when I cleared out his house. And it's the only Windows machine I have. And the only reason why I had it was so I could upload the latest TomTom software. But now TomTom,
Oh, yeah.
but which is weird because the TomTom itself runs on Linux. Go figure. But they had no way to upload it from Linux. But now their latest software doesn't even detect my TomTom. I plug it in.
It's not the same company anymore. The TomTom name brand is owned by another conglomerate out of China now.
Really? I wonder if that's the reason why it no longer detects my TomTom.
Yeah. But yeah, what was I going to say? Something about I still have an old Windows 3.1 box just for the kicks and giggles of it. By the way, it's dual booting with 286 System 5 Unix. It's my old dinosaur that I show off to people every now and then. And I had to replace a few caps on the motherboard, but it's still running.
My phone is about to die, so I'm going to lose you, at least from this, the thing I can talk on.
Plug it in. Charge the battery.
Yeah, I've got to get over there. It's
All you need is a cable.
well, I have plenty of cables. I just don't have the. Well, maybe I do.
Plug it into your computer.
No. That's crazy talk.
Do you guys have any guesses when electronics are going to get cheaper again? It's funny, for a long time we had Moore's Law and prices were coming down. And with COVID, they went up and still pretty
That's
up.
because of parts.
Well, from Electronics Weekly, they're still saying that there are supplier shortages all over because manufacturing plants are being screwed in Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia. But maybe as the Indian plants get more and more online, then maybe we'll start seeing parts come down again.
Yeah, and we're supposed to be having fabs
What's
coming
wrong with
online
those
in the US
plants,
too.
though? The ones in
Nothing's wrong. It's just that there's chip shortages and part shortages.
Yeah, but so Taiwan is a huge manufacturer of chips. And I don't see why Taiwan should be having a problem.
There are tons of shortages. There's huge demand into the European market, Indian market, and the Middle East market for chips.
Has the chip demand gone up?
Yeah.
I mean, higher than it was before COVID? Or
Yes.
before times, if you want to call it that?
Yes.
Really?
It makes sense. We have portions
What
of the world
what
that
are
are
we making that we didn't make then? I mean, electric
massive
vehicles?
machine learning data centers and electric
Yeah.
vehicles with computers in them.
Oh, I know what. How about Bitcoin and that kind of stuff?
There's also a lot of shortages with any chip that has extensive processing, like the power supplies that are integrated with the coil and some caps, and some of the 6-axis motion detector, pressure sensors. All those are a real mess because of the extra steps. And then everything I've been buying from Mausner is still about 20% higher than it was pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
Mosier is still high. Newark is still high. DigiKey just started dropping their prices slightly in the last quarter.
And the Jetson Nano went from $65 to $150.
Yeah, if it's got AI stamped on it, it's not going to come down anytime soon.
Well, that's why I'm wondering about the Orange Pi, because it's got a neural processing unit on there. And the problem is, it's been 5 years since the Jetson Nano came out, and it's now cost more than double when it did. So I'm trying to figure out if there's any way I could get something cheaper that would have a comparable or better performance without a ton of software issues.
Well, the Orange Pi is sourcing out of China, so it's on a slightly different sourcing model.
There.
Did you see this Brainy Pi? It's not out yet, but
Brainy Pi? No, I hadn't heard of that.
you knew, yeah, enterprise grade device for AI on edge and IoT needs.
Enterprise generally means pricey, though.
Yeah, and it's not available. So I don't know what it's gonna, but it also does say hobbyists and stuff too. So I don't know.
Yeah, those NPUs tend to be a pain in the butt to work with, but the network I'm working with isn't that complicated. So here's hoping. Camera compatibility. Go ahead.
So, oh, yes, here, this is an NPU. What do you? Is the Jetson has a GPU or what?
Yep.
The Jetson has a nice, incredibly compatible GPU where you can just run the exact same code that you'd run on any of your normal NVIDIA computers and have it just work the exact same way, mostly. Like software and compatibility wise, Jetsons are really nice. It's just they were not available at all for a while, and now they're more than double the price.
Yeah.
And they came out with a new one, but it's like $300 or $400, which is kind of outside the price range for a robot that's supposed to be about $1,500 sell price.
Is that that's the Orin that you were talking about last time?
Yeah, the Orin Nano.
Yeah.
I mean, mind you, it has like 12 to 20 times as much compute, but that's still real pricey.
I just posted here a couple of links for, similar boards to the Pi.
Thanks. Yeah, there's the Orange Pi 5 that I'm looking into. The big question there is, can you actually get the NPU to work? And can you get a camera to run with it? Because it looks like it's not compatible with the Raspberry Pi cameras. If I can just plug in an IMX 219, that'd be great, because I could just use the same one I'm using now, but it doesn't look like that's doable. Anyway, thanks, guys.
So, Nick, I guess you're micless now.
And you expect him to talk?
Well, finally got Nick to shut up.
All right, guys. Sounds like that's about it. We'll see you either at RARS Fest or next month at the meeting.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
Paul.
All right.
Hey, Paul, if you'll go ahead and order those 8 tables, I'll send you tonight. No, don't order them yet. I'll send you tonight the emails and stuff that you want to put in the comment block.
All right.
And if you want me to chip in, since it sounds like things are getting a bit elaborate, just let me know.
Well, how we usually approach this is Paul will buy the tables, and then we all will have to reimburse Paul for our individual table sets. So, like, whoever's doing TriEmbed will reimburse Paul. I know Flat Space will reimburse Paul for 2 tables. Forge Initiative would reimburse Paul for 2 tables. That kind
Yeah,
of thing.
what was the rate? I didn't
Burlington,
recall it being large.
we've got 10 tables for our groups.
They $20 a table.
Yeah, that's not bad.
So,
Alright.
like, Alamance is getting 2 tables. As a matter of fact, I got to think about this because Shop Space wants a table or two. We might need 12 tables.
Well, you better start counting.
Yeah, I will.
All right, TriEmbed wants to.
I'm
I
more
think I got
interested.
5 organizations that each want 2, and then we've got 3 other organizations.
I want 1 table, and if it's possible to get a spot for robots to run around, that'd be great.
I think the spot is available. We just will have to, if we're going to set a separate corral, we'll just have to separate it from the Forge Initiative's corral.
Yeah, this should definitely not run in the same environment as other less durable robots.
Yeah, you'll probably run over them, destroy them all.
Yes, yes, without any doubt. This thing weighs upwards of 30, 40 pounds.
What would you anchor the corral sides down with?
I am figuring that out. I only considered the having a corral like, let's say, 2 hours ago when we started talking about this. My guess would be something like sandbags, but I'm gonna have to figure that out.
Cinder blocks, bags of
Yeah,
sand, or
water.
Isn't that what
gravel.
the Forge Initiative's using? Is just cinder blocks with landscaping sticks through them?
I think so. Yep.
Yeah. I also need to figure out logistics here because I gotta be there, so I gotta make sure all the stuff arrives and gets back. So
Well, if you don't have Nick as the driver, you might just be able to drive it. Have somebody drive it slowly through the aisles or around the whatever.
that'd be
Limit the
good. I
speed.
mean, I have good speed limiting, so that shouldn't be an issue at least. All right. Well, signing off. It's good
Yeah.
seeing you all.
All right.